From Anshe Sfard Bethel Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Parshat Pinchas, Good Help. If we look at Parshat Pinchas and we ask ourselves, why is the Torah making such a big deal about Pinchas? I mean, it seems like a minor character in the Torah, and yet he's one of these people who has his own brit, his own covenant. Few people in the Torah have their own covenant with God. One of them would be David, King David HaMelech, King David himself. Sure, he's the main king of Israel for all generations, we understand. But why does Pinchas have his own covenant? But then we say, wait, this is a very significant event. It says in Tehillim that among the few events that you record in history, one of the major events was Pinchas saving the Jews. In last week's Parsha, 24,000 people died in a plague because of immorality and idolatry. That is the largest plague of any episode in the Chumash. Golden calf, 3,000. Korach, the rebellion of Korach, 14,000. Here, the immorality in the story of before Pinchas arose, Baal Peor, 24,000 died. This is a major crisis. Below Chiliti B'nai Israel, they were on the precipice of the destruction of all the Jewish people. But the question is, within this crisis, why does Pinchas have to save the day? Why not Moshe? The rabbis say that he'd forgotten the law. Pinchas was the one who remembered it. So they said, why don't you do it? You remembered the law. You kill the immoral people. You put an end to this nonsense. However, my teachers at Yeshivat Har Tzion, some of my colleagues associated with Yeshivat Har Tzion, the Gush, have proffered a theory which says that Moshe had failed in his leadership, and that's why Pinchas had to arise. They say that he failed all along. He failed as he gave up in the story of the complainers in Parshat Balotcha. They say that he failed because he fell on his face in response to the spies in Parshat Shlach. They say that he failed because in Parshat Korach, he also fell on his face as he was approached by all these naysayers. And Yaakov Meidan, Rabbi from Yeshivat Har Tzion, says that in the story of the hitting of the rock, it wasn't the hitting of the rock that was the problem. The problem was that they fell on their faces. When approached by the crowds, the masses, who were upset about the lack of water, they fell on their faces. And here again in the Pinchas story, he doesn't fall on his face, but he and Aaron cry. Come the scholars of Yeshivat Har Tzion, they say, that's not good enough. Falling in your face, even if it's within prayer. Crying, these are not actions of a leader. We expect and we want leadership. Over the years, in other videos, I've suggested something else. I'd like to add something to this theory this year as well. And that is that if we look back into Parshat Balotcha, even before that, Torah says clearly, as I've pointed out in the past, that the main words of this book are that in every tribe there will be leaders who will be with you, Moshe, with you, Aaron. They will be the following leaders, the Nasi, the leader for Yehuda and for Reuven and Shimon, and so on and so on. Every tribe has its leader. That was fine. As long as that was going fine, everything was going fine. But he begins to see, with the complaints that take place in Parshat Balotcha, that there is no one else. Despite all this bureaucracy that's been set up, of every tribe having a leader, it's not true. He really is alone. And that explains a very bizarre statement by Moshe Rabbeinu in Parshat Balotcha. He says, Hanochi aritet kol am hazeh? Did I conceive this nation? Did I give birth to this nation? Do you expect me to carry this nation in my bosom like a nursing mother? What is Moshe saying? He says, God, I didn't expect to be the only leader. We were supposed to have helpers here. So God says, all right, fine, I'll give you 70 elders. But it's very interesting. Those 70 elders play zero role in the whole book. Never again do we hear from the 70 elders. And that's why he's so despondent. He's despondent in Parshat Shlach. He's despondent in Parshat Korach. Because there are no elders. It's a mirage. There's no help. Even the Nesiim themselves, various leaders of Israel, they were the problem in Korach. They were the problem in the spies. And therefore he has every reason to fall on his face. There's no one to stand with him. Even as Rabbi Dan pointed out, Kalev is not such a great leader. He thinks he's going to take the Jews to Israel in this condition. He can't take them. There is no leadership. I'd like to claim that when he falls on his face in a sense of the following. He says, I'd be happy to lead further, but guess what? It's just not possible. It's not that I'm a bad leader. It's not that I'm not doing my job. My job is to inspire more leaders. And I give up until another leader emerges. Well, it didn't work at the hitting of the rock. It didn't work with the Korach and with Shlach. Shlach, we begin to see some emergence of Kalev and particularly Yoshua. But it worked in the case of Pinchas. The tears of Moshe in the story of Pinchas led to someone rising up and saying, I'm going to do something. And when that happens, everything changes. This entire book changes at that point. Why does it change? Because now there's leadership behind him. As the Sfat Emet says, it had to be someone other than Moshe. You can't save, the leader can't save them every time. The story of the spies, the story of the golden calf, Moshe stands up as one man against defending the entire nation. That's not going to work. As God says to him in the Midrash, a chair of one leg will not stand. And what does the Sfat Emet says? He says, Hayat tzarich liot al yedei ish pashut toch klal Yisrael. Pinchas represents every man. He's just any old person. He happens to be related to Aaron. But it's not significant. As the rabbis say, he wasn't really a Kohen. He was too little to be anointed as a Kohen. It's only here he becomes significant. He becomes a Kohen. But until that, he was absolutely no one. And it takes nobody to do something. Because it takes someone other than Moshe, other than the absolute leaders, to do something about the situation. From now on, everything's swell. When they go to fight the Midianites, he's going to do it with the leaders of Israel, with Pinchas. There's a problem with the booty of Midian. He'll deal with it with the leaders of Israel. There's a problem with the daughters who want more rights. He's going to deal with it with the leaders of Israel. There's a problem with the tribes who don't want the girls to have too many rights. He'll deal with it as the last story with the tribes, with the leaders of the tribes of Israel. He's going to command the tribes. Rashi HaMatot, he'll speak to them in Parshat Matot. He understands that now there is leadership and he utilizes it and he emerges magnificently at the end of the book as a true leader because he has people under him. Not only that, but he even appoints someone. He says, God, we have to appoint someone else. And they appoint Yoshua. This is a man who understands that we have to have followers as well. It's not enough to just be the leader. What's the difference between what I'm saying and what the rabbis at Yeshivat Har Etzion are saying? It's similar. They say he gave up and he was a bad leader. I also say he gave up. But sometimes you can't do it because you're not good enough. And sometimes you can't do it because it physically is not possible. Moshe can't be the one to solve the problem. He's not the solution. Someone else has to be the solution. When he falls on his face, perhaps one of my congregants suggested, perhaps he's praying for someone else to emerge. Someone else to emerge. And that someone else, only that someone else, can save the day. And you know who that was? It was Pinchas. And that's why Parshat Pinchas is a very significant moment. It's the moment of, as I called it in earlier years, the dawn of mass leadership. The dawn of a leadership, as I call it, good help. It's someone to help Moshe. And the minute you have that, then you don't just have a leader and a blob of a nation, but you have an actual nation that's being led. You have some success on the part of Moshe Rabbeinu to lead the Jewish people. And it took Moshe stepping back. That's what it takes sometimes to lead. You have to step back and say, someone else is going to have to solve this problem. Because I physically, spiritually, conceptually, I cannot solve the problem until the Jews take the leadership into their own hands. That's our theory in Parshat Pinchas. Moshe is not a failed leader according to this approach. Moshe is a leader who's waiting for the dawn of mass leadership. Thank you. Thank you for joining us here at the Anshe Sfar Beth Elameth congregation for a discussion of Parshat Pinchas. Join us each week for a discussion of the Parsha, various holidays. Thanks to Jason Lefkowitz, our producer. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit ASBEE.org.